Have you ever found yourself just standing in front of a jewelry store window, like staring at a diamond ring and wondering how we all just collectively agreed to this?
Oh, absolutely. It's
Oh,
kind of wild when you actually think about it.
right. Like, why is this tiny, completely clear rock so exorbitantly expensive? Because if you actually break down the raw numbers, I mean, a 1 carat diamond is worth roughly 14,000 ROD.
Yeah, that's a lot for a tiny rock.
It is. And meanwhile, if you were to, just pick up an equivalent weight of common stone from your driveway, its value is essentially zero. Like it's too small to even measure.
Right.
And yet they are both just minerals, they both spent millions of years just sitting in the dirt. So, what is the universe actually rewarding here? Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are looking at a really fascinating essay that attempts to unravel that exact mystery.
It's a profound mystery, honestly. And it really gets to the very core of how we assign value to, well, to existence itself, really. The essay we're exploring today is titled Internal Structure is What Matters, and it's written by Sufeng.
Right.
It's translated by Trans and edited by Kairor. And the mission for our deep dive today is to explore the author's central and incredibly bold, I should add, argument.
Very bold.
Yeah, he argues that the fundamental nature, the value, and the ultimate destiny of absolutely everything in the universe, from a lump of coal to a mushroom to a human soul, are dictated entirely by its internal structure.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to start where the author starts, which is very grounded in hard physical reality.
Yeah, the basic chemistry stuff.
Exactly. He points out that sugar is sweet and tea is bitter.
Hmm.
And, we don't need to retread high school chemistry here, but we know that humans didn't take a vote and decide we prefer sugar to be sweet.
Right. It's just a fundamental reality dictated by its molecular structure.
Yeah. And then he brings in that stark economic comparison between diamonds and gold. So we mentioned the diamond is about 14,000 RMB for a carat. Well, an ounce of gold is about 10,270 RMB.
Which sounds like a lot until you do the conversion.
Exactly, because when you do the math, 1 carat of gold is only about 70 RMB.
Wow.
Yeah. So the price difference between a diamond and gold of the exact same weight is a staggering 200 to 1.
What's fascinating here is how he uses this basic chemistry as a springboard.
Mm-hmm.
He's establishing this foundational law. Like, human beings did not arbitrarily decide that the diamond is the hardest natural substance on Earth.
Right.
We didn't program it to reflect light in that mesmerizing way.
Mm-hmm.
The diamond's atomic arrangement, that really intense, rigid, three-dimensional grid of carbon atoms, physically forces those properties into existence.
It's just physics.
Exactly. And those properties, in turn, command its value. The gold has a different structure, so it yields a different value. And that common driveway stone you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
it has a chaotic, weak structure, so it holds no value at all.
It's like baking, right? Like you can take the exact same ingredients, flour, sugar, eggs, but if you change the structure of how they're combined and how they're baked, you get either a fluffy cake or like a rock hard biscuit.
That is a perfect analogy, and he actually applies this biological reality to everything. He brings up mushrooms in a forest.
Oh, right. The toxic ones?
Yeah, some are highly nutritious and will sustain your life, while others are entirely toxic and will shut down your organs. And that isn't a matter of opinion or luck.
Yeah.
It's entirely based on their cellular makeup.
We all understand that physical premise, I think. But reading through this, I just kept waiting for the pivot. Because if carbon atoms dictate a rock's value, how on earth does he leap from geology to, human destiny? It makes sense for rocks and mushrooms, but the author takes this a massive step further, right?
He leaps by stretching this structural rule across a vast cosmological scale, like a truly massive scale. He argues that the universe is essentially one continuous structural hierarchy. According to the text, entities like the greatest creator, gods, Buddha, angels, bodhisattvas, celestials, devils, demons, mortals.
That is a huge list.
It is.
Yeah.
And he says they all differ from one another solely because of their internal structures. It's this continuum of complexity and purity.
Wow.
But he doesn't just stop in the spiritual realm. He brings this absolute structural law right down into human society.
Yeah, and this is where it gets into some pretty sensitive territory.
Very much so. Even among humans, he argues, there are saints, sages, mortals, laymen, and ignorant people. And they differ not because of random chance or social engineering, but because each person possesses a radically different internal architecture.
Which brings us to a highly sensitive application of this theory. The author argues that a person's role in society, like the responsibilities they take on and the accomplishments they achieve, are completely determined by their internal structure. And he uses this incredibly striking metaphor. He says gems are inlaid into crowns, while cobblestones are not.
Yeah.
Like, nobody takes a piece of gravel from the street and mounts it on a royal crown.
Exactly. And because of this structural absolute, the author makes a highly controversial pivot regarding how we view our own lives. He explicitly states that it is wrong to envy others.
Right.
And he goes further, saying it is fundamentally wrong to blame, quote, social injustice for your position in life. The text insists that we shouldn't complain about having a low social status, we shouldn't resent our position, and we shouldn't loathe where we end up.
He actually advocates for a state of acceptance that he calls being content in poverty and devoted to spiritual matters, which, I mean, I want to interject here because to truly understand this text, we have to talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah, we definitely do.
This concept that people shouldn't fight against social injustice or that poverty is just a reflection of one's quote-unquote internal structure is a massive departure from modern sociology.
A total 180.
Exactly. So for everyone listening, jumping into this deep dive really means temporarily suspending our modern frameworks of systemic inequality, historical bias, institutional hurdles, all of that. We are stepping into the author's specific thought experiment where the universe operates as a flawless, unbiased meritocracy.
Right, and just to be clear.
Yeah, I want to be super clear. We aren't endorsing this viewpoint as social policy. We're not taking sides here. But we need to impartially explore the philosophical logic he's building. Like, if we accept his premise, what are the implications of living in a universe that actually operates this way?
It's essential framing, really, because within the boundaries of his logic, the author is proposing a paradigm of absolute radical responsibility.
Radical responsibility.
Yeah, in this framework, the universe isn't cruel. It is just a flawless sorting mechanism. Therefore, if you find yourself functioning as a cobblestone, complaining about not being placed in the crown is deeply illogical.
Right, because a crown needs a gem.
Exactly. The crown requires a gem. If you are not a gem, the crown will reject you by its very nature. Cool. The only logical path forward is to stop yelling at the crown maker and start examining your own composition.
So let's look at what that radical responsibility actually demands of us, because it stands in direct opposition to how most people, try to navigate the world.
Oh, completely.
The text lists out all these frantic external actions humans take to improve their lot in life. Like, we flatter people, we curry favor, we try to leverage connections to get special treatment, we beg for mercy when things go wrong, or we just blame bad luck, or we just endlessly search for shortcuts to success.
Yeah, the quick fixes.
Right. And the author essentially says every single one of those actions is entirely useless.
They're useless because they are fundamentally external attempts to bypass an internal law. And the author uses some incredibly vivid imagery from nature to drive this home.
I loved this part.
It's great. He writes that peaches and plums don't talk, yet people naturally come to pick them. Peonies don't assume their beauty or demand attention, but people naturally sing songs about them.
They just exist as they are.
Right. Flowers don't draft marketing plans to force butterflies to visit. The internal structure of the flower creates the fragrance, and that fragrance physically dictates the reality of the butterfly arriving.
I love that imagery. But the flip side of those metaphors is much more brutal.
Yeah, it takes a turn.
He points out that no matter how much flies and mosquitoes dress themselves up, people will still detest them. Beggars can't suddenly have refined tastes just by changing their clothes, and dog meat isn't served at grand feasts.
It's a bit blunt.
It's very blunt. But I see his point. Like, you can put a tiny little tuxedo on a mosquito, but at its core, its internal structure dictates that it is going to bite you and suck your blood, so you are going to swat it. The tuxedo doesn't alter the nature of the interaction.
Right. The external dressing cannot mask the internal reality from the universe's sorting mechanism. It just sees right through it.
But, and this is where I have to push back on the author's tone a bit, the text says that if someone blames heaven, earth, society, or others for their bad luck instead of looking inward, they are either, quote, ignorant or just plain stupid.
Yeah, that's a strong word.
So what does this all mean? I really struggle with that phrasing. Calling someone stupid for recognizing the reality of their environment feels incredibly dismissive. I mean, if you plant a perfectly good seed in toxic waste, it won't grow into a peach tree. Is it really fair or even logical to call the seed stupid for noticing that the soil is poisoning it?
That is the exact friction point of this entire philosophy. But if we connect this to the bigger picture and dig into the mechanics of his argument, The harshness isn't born out of malice. It's born out of an uncompromising view of energy conservation.
Energy conservation.
Yeah, in his framework, the universe only speaks one language, which is structural resonance. Complaining about the toxic soil, while entirely valid from an emotional standpoint, uses up vital energy without changing the toxicity of the soil one bit.
Oh, I see.
You cannot negotiate with the universe. You cannot guilt-trip the cosmos into giving you a better outcome.
So it's less about moral failing and more about functional utility. Like complaining is just a waste of calories.
Exactly. To the author, complaining is the equivalent of screaming at a locked door instead of looking for the key.
Hmm.
It is stupid in the sense that it is a functionally useless action.
You're just tiring yourself out.
Right. You are burning your limited life force on something that fundamentally cannot alter your reality, because reality only responds to an internal shift.
Okay, I can see the brutal pragmatism in that. But this raises a massive mechanical question for me. We aren't carbon atoms like the diamond. We aren't cellular spores like the mushroom. We are complex psychological beings.
Yes, we are.
So when the author demands that we change our internal structure, what exactly is he asking us to change? How does a human being physically or metaphysically alter their structure?
This is where he moves from abstract philosophy to practical definition. He defines a human being's structure entirely by their intrinsic quality. Yeah, in this framework, your moral and behavioral traits are the structural bonds of your being, much like atomic bonds in chemistry.
The text actually gets very specific here with a list of traits, right? The author lists good intrinsic qualities: diligence, kindness, purity, honesty, integrity, modesty, and open-mindedness.
A solid list.
And then he lists the bad qualities: jealousy, blame, selfishness, greed, laziness, arrogance, dishonesty, and narrow-mindedness. But how do abstract concepts like honesty function as a physical or structural bond?
Think of it in terms of structural engineering. Honesty and diligence act as metaphysical load-bearing beams.
Load-bearing beams.
Why? Because honesty aligns with reality.
Yeah.
It doesn't require constant maintenance to keep up a facade, Diligence creates consistent compounding growth. These traits create strong, stable, self-sustaining bonds.
Right.
Conversely, traits like jealousy, selfishness, and dishonesty are chaotic. They introduce microfractures into the self. A lie requires more lies to support it, which is constantly draining energy and weakening the overall integrity of the person.
That structural engineering angle makes a lot of sense. It actually reminds me of the foundation of a house, but
Yeah.
we can take that analogy even further. Let's say you have a house with a fundamentally cracked, sinking foundation, which represents those chaotic, bad qualities like selfishness or dishonesty.
Okay, yeah.
You can paint the house, you can put up beautiful new siding, you can plant expensive bushes in the front yard. That's the equivalent of flattering people, using connections, dressing up the mosquito.
The external fixes.
Exactly. But no matter how nice the house looks from the street, the physics of the cracked foundation remain. Eventually, the walls are going to bow, the roof is going to sag, and the house is going to collapse under its own weight.
The paint job cannot save you from gravity.
Exactly.
And the author makes a very bold, definitive claim regarding those bad qualities, that cracked foundation. He states unequivocally that a person with a bad quality will never be smooth, refined, or successfully accomplish their career over the long term. They simply cannot sail easily through life.
I'm really glad you added over the long term, because he does include a caveat that I found very realistic. He admits that people with bad internal structures might enjoy good fortune for what he calls brief times.
Yes, the brief times.
And we all see this in the real world, right? We all know someone who is deeply dishonest but somehow wins the lottery, or like an incredibly arrogant person who just keeps getting promoted at work.
We do. We absolutely do. But the text insists we have to look at the mechanism of that brief success. A structure made of greed or arrogance relies entirely on external input, like taking from others, manipulating situations.
It's parasitic.
Right, it isn't self-sustaining. So while the universe's sorting mechanism might seem delayed, or a cracked foundation might hold up perfectly fine during a stretch of sunny weather, the first major storm, the inevitable stress of life, will bring it down.
It has to fall.
The author insists that this unearned luck absolutely will not last for a lifetime, because the structural integrity simply isn't there to support it.
The cobblestone eventually falls out of the crown. It's such a fascinating way to view personal development. But, as I was reading the final sections of the essay, I realized the author pulls a massive bait and switch.
Oh, totally.
Up until this point, the text really sounds like a heavy-handed self-help guide for earthly success. Stop complaining, be honest, work hard, and the universe will naturally sort you into a respectable position in society. But the text pivots dramatically here. Earthly success isn't the goal at all.
Not at all. Earthly success is merely a byproduct of a strong structure, but it isn't the destination. The true focus of the essay, its ultimate demographic, are people who are practicing what he calls self-refinery, with the express goal of moving toward heaven.
Moving toward heaven, that completely changes the stakes of everything we've talked about. For these specific individuals, the author essentially gets on his knees and pleads with them.
He really does.
He says they must, quote, never waste valuable time and energy on changing the external world or on changing their external appearance. It's an absolute prohibition on outward focus.
Because for a person seeking heaven, the physical world and social status are ultimately irrelevant distractions. The focus must be entirely on perfecting what he terms the non-material structures of their lives.
The non-material structures.
Right, it's about developing that pristine inner quality until it is impenetrable. And he states plainly, without any room for negotiation, that without excellent quality and a perfect internal structure, one can never reach heaven.
I want to linger on that because he isn't saying that heaven has, like, a bouncer at the door checking a VIP list of good deeds.
You have no VIP list.
Right. He is framing heaven as a realm of pure structural resonance.
Precisely. It is physically or perhaps metaphysically impossible to enter. If your non-material structure contains the chaotic bonds of jealousy, laziness, or arrogance, you simply will not resonate with the frequency of heaven.
You wouldn't fit.
You couldn't exist there even if you were allowed in the same way a fish cannot survive on a mountaintop. The environment requires a specific biological structure.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that brings the entire argument full circle brilliantly. He goes all the way back to the rock metaphor we started with to close the loop.
Ah, yes, the diamond in the stone.
He concludes by stating that a hard rock, no matter how much it struggles, no matter how much it cries out to be cherished and valued by others, will never be treated like a treasure. It absolutely must alter its internal structure.
It's the only way.
It must undergo the immense pressure and transformation to become a gemstone. Only then will it naturally, effortlessly be placed in the most eye-striking and noble places.
This raises an important question, though, because it demands a profound inner shift from the reader. We spend vast amounts of our lives agonizing over the external. We want a better job title. We want nicer clothes. We want our peers to treat us with more respect. We want society to recognize our worth.
All external things.
Yeah, but this philosophy says that all of that wanting, all of that striving, is fundamentally misdirected energy. It is not about changing your clothes, your job, or your society. It is about the agonizing, silent, internal work of fundamentally transforming your non-material structure.
From a rock to a diamond.
Exactly. If you are a cobblestone, you have to do the work to become a diamond. And the promise of the text is that once you actually do that work, you won't even have to ask to be put in the crown. The universe will simply put you there, because that is where diamonds belong.
It strips away every single excuse we have, doesn't it? Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive today. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the source text.
It's been quite the ride.
We've covered some immense philosophical ground, starting from the physical, economic realities of why a diamond holds more value than driveway gravel, exploring how atomic structure dictates reality. And then we navigated the very challenging social applications, stepping into a thought experiment that completely rejects external complaining and demands radical, uncompromising responsibility for our own state of being.
The radical responsibility piece is so key.
Yeah. And finally, we arrived at the spiritual imperative of the text, the absolute necessity of refining our internal, non-material qualities like honesty, diligence, and kindness, not just for earthly success, but to structurally qualify for our highest possible destiny.
It is a heavy framework to process, and it challenges a lot of our default human behaviors. But as we leave you today, I want to offer a final thought to ponder, building on the mechanics we've discussed.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the universe truly functions like a grand sorting mechanism, a system that's constantly and flawlessly organizing things by their internal structure, placing gems and crowns and cobblestones on the ground, think about a current, persistent frustration in your own life.
Something you've been complaining about.
Right? Something you have been blaming entirely on external forces, on bad luck, or on the actions of other people. If you completely stopped expending energy trying to change the crown you want to be placed in, and instead focused 100% of your energy on changing your own cellular makeup, reinforcing your patience, your diligence, your honesty. What new reality would your new structure naturally attract?
Wow. That is a deeply confronting but ultimately empowering question to sit with. If you change your internal structure, what external reality will you inevitably attract? Thank you again for listening to this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.